Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to part 2 of Attack the King, which is my top 10 middle game idea number 1. In the last video, in part 1, we looked at the sacrifice on h7, and I wanted to do a quick follow-up on that video before I get into the main content of this one. I mentioned in this position, which was taken from one of my games, that here black played the move knight a5, and I followed up with e5, kicking this knight away and sacrificing on h7. I mentioned that there's a good defense here for black, which is d5, but I didn't show how this defense worked, so I wanted to show that. The idea is, well, first of all, if I exchange here, then this knight is safe. It's not getting chased away. So if I try to chase that knight away by pushing on with e5, what the d5 move has done is it's provided a perch for the knight on e4. So the knight comes to e4. Maybe I can take that knight off and try and gain a pawn, but on the other hand, I have a weak pawn over here too. So in net, I'm not going to gain anything, and black is about equal in this position. So that's this particular defense, and it's one of a class of defenses against the bishop takes h7 attack. If you can place something on this diagonal, sometimes a pawn on g6, pawn on f5, or sometimes a piece on f5 or a piece on e4, that's sufficient to block the diagonal and just prevent the attack. So that's one method of defense. Another one is, of course, just maintaining the knight here. If we back up, if you can just maintain the knight on f6, that provides a perfectly good defense. Or as an alternative, if it gets chased away, sometimes this knight can reroute, or the other knight can come over, depending on your circumstances, and land on the f8 square, and that's also pretty good defender of h7 and g6. So a knight on f8 is a very good defensive piece, and will certainly prevent the bishop takes h7 sacrifice. And another idea is the bishop on e7, keeping that dark squared bishop lined up with the queen, so that even if the knight gets chased away after the sacrifice, there's no knight coming to g5 to deliver that second check. You can chop it off. Although we did see one case where rook on the h-file supporting a pawn allowed that maneuver, but in general that bishop plus queen battery will keep the knight from coming to that square, and that's a good defense. And then finally, and kind of the point and the motivation for this video, a very common defense to the bishop takes h7 attack idea is just to move the pawn forward. Why not put that pawn on h6? It does a number of good things. It controls the g5 square, and if a bishop does happen to land on h7, if the pawn is here, it's not going there with any kind of it's not opening up any lines. It's just sitting there, and even if you don't take it, if it's not safe to take or it's protected, the king can go to the h8 square, and white hasn't gained a pawn, he hasn't opened any lines, and unless there's some kind of attack on f7, nothing much too bad is going to happen. So h6 is a pretty good defense. And another point about h6 is that it leaves these two pawns back, and so they still control a lot of the squares in front of the king. So it seems like h6 is kind of the lesser of two evils. If you move the g pawn forward, then that creates some weak squares. You have some squares around the king that are not defended by pawns. So it's sort of the least bad pawn move is to move that h6 pawn forward, and that's why you see it so commonly played. But it does have some drawbacks, and we'll see that white has ideas for attacking that h6 pawn in the rest of this video. This first example was taken from a game played in Calcutta in 1856 between John Cochrane and Mohishinder Banerjee. So Cochrane was an English lawyer. He spent time both in England and in India, and he played a match against Howard Staunton. So he was a top-class player. Staunton won that match, but Staunton at that time was considered the strongest player in the world, so no shame in losing to him. And Cochrane played in a very interesting and enterprising style, very tactical, and his games are worth taking a look at. This match played between Cochrane and Banerjee was there's many games from this, and Banerjee was generally a weaker player, so Cochrane won most of those games, but Banerjee got in some shots. And also he liked to play these what are now called Indian defenses with the early knight to f6. They're playing knight to f6 before moving the pawns out. So he gave his name to a whole class of defenses that are still in use today. So anyway, this game, let's just go to the critical point here. White has just played queen h5 and is threatening around the king. And if we take a brief look at the situation, we can determine what are the characteristics here that can lead to a successful sacrifice. First is that white has the lead in development. More of his pieces are out and actively placed, and a lot of black's pieces are either undeveloped or they're not out and not doing anything active. In fact, this queen is kind of in the way because it hinders the rook coming to e8 at the moment, and it's a bit of a target on the e-file, although it also is pinning the knight at the moment because this rook is undefended back here. But in general, white has a pretty big lead in development, and the pieces are well placed around the king side. The bishop is aiming at h6, and the queen is there to take back, and that's a key point, as well as this actively placed bishop here threatening on h7. So in this position, maybe the best move is to take the knight off with bishop takes e5. But, well, Banerjee played knight c6. It's natural to want to try and get your pieces out, get them over for defense. And now the sacrifice works. Bishop takes h6. And if black takes back, I'll just show the main point here. That was not played in the game, but you just play queen takes pawn, and this threat of mate actually cannot be stopped. There's no way. It's kind of interesting. You might want to put a pawn there to block that diagonal, but the bishop is sitting in front of the pawn, so it's not possible. Other obstacles just get chopped off. So this is that's unstoppable mate. So Banerjee tried knight takes e5. Of course, if your opponent can't take the bishop back when you play bishop takes h6, that's already a sign that it's a good idea to play that sacrifice. And now, if you want to try and guess the move here, there's a very nice follow-up move by white. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. Cochrane played the move. Bishop takes g7. And now there's a double threat. There's a threat of mate on h8 and a threat of mate on h7 with the other bishop. So you can't just take the bishop, for example, because queen h7 is mate. The best try to defend is knight to g6. And at first that looks pretty good because the knight blocks the bishop. So queen h7 mate is not on anymore. And it defends h8, so queen h8 mate. And so that one move defends it against both threats. But you just take the bishop off. Bishop takes f6. And now there's a third threat here, and black is helpless to prevent the simple idea of queen to h6 followed by queen to g7 mate. His position is just all tied up, and there's no pieces that he can mobilize to get there in time to stop that plan. So it's a forced mate in 3. Okay, next I wanted to take a look at a game played by Joseph Blackburn. Before I get into this, I guess I wanted to mention some of the rationale for what I'm doing here. You know, the more I'm careful to mention the names of these players because if you want to build up a good, strong library of attacking patterns and ideas, you know, one of the best ways to do that is to study some of the famous games of the great attacking players. So, you know, I'm trying to give you some cues. I will include in the description to this video pointer to these particular games that I am using for examples. But you can search for other games by these players and find a lot of really interesting ideas. And that's also why I'm going over so many examples of the same kind of sacrifice. I think it helps make the patterns easier to remember when you see them kind of collected together like that, and you can find common elements between these different sacrifices and also see things that are unique and different to each particular condition. So anyway, this particular game, it was played between Joseph Blackburn and someone named Blanchard. This was part of a simultaneous exhibit. Blackburn was playing 8 games simultaneously while blindfolded, so a blindfold simul, and he comes up with this pretty nice combination here. In this position, it's black's turn to move. Blackburn has the white pieces here. His opponent, Blanchard, he has the black pieces, and he castles here. And castling is just a mistake because it allows the bishop takes h6 sacrifice. And we see here a very typical configuration. with the queen behind the bishop. I think this is probably the most common configuration for the bishop takes h6 sacrifice. In the previous example, the queen was sitting here, but it had the same effect. Basically, the queen comes in after the bishop and kind of cuts off the air from the king. You know, it has no escape, and then other pieces come in to help finish the king off. So black castled here, oblivious to the danger, and then bang, bishop takes h6. So in this game, black was game. He took the bishop and said, "Show me." So queen takes h6, and of course we have this bishop here on the light squared diagonal aimed at h7. So there's an immediate checkmate threat. Knight to g6, similar to the last game. Knight to g6 is played here with the idea of blocking that bishop. And now knight to g5, just bringing in more force. Notice how economically Blackburn is using his forces. He's got all the pieces involved except for this rook over in the corner. And let's see, maybe that makes it into the game later. No, I think he manages to win without that. So knight g5, just increasing the pressure. I think, yeah, there's a threat of just taking that knight. Oh, no. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's just an immediate threat of mate there once again. So rook e8 was played to give the king an escape square. And now instead of going in for queen to h7 check, which is a lot of players would play that kind of instinctively, there's a much better move here. And, well, I can't say that. Queen to h7 check actually wins too. But if you want to look for another move here, there's a different way of handling this situation, which I think is really pretty and characteristic of Blackburn's style. Okay, his idea is to, if you want to think about it, pause the video here. I'm going to give the answer away. Yeah, Blackburn's idea is to just throw more fuel on the fire. Rook takes f7 check. Immediately with another mate threat, with the rook and the rook cutting off the escape now, and the queen coming to h7 will be mate. But the bishop can take there. Now queen h7 check, driving the king to f8, and queen takes f7 mate. So that's pretty nice. That's a forced mate that he was able to see while blindfolded and playing against 7 other players. There was a total of 8 games going on while he was blindfolded. So pretty nice little tactic there. And this is a good position to remember. Just sacrifice the rook on f7, threaten mate, force him to take, and then check and take here, because you've gotten rid of the defender of the f7 square by that maneuver. Okay, let's take a look at the next example. This is a game played between Kiba Rubinstein and Efim Bogolyubov in Stockholm in 1920. So Rubinstein is not known as one of those great attacking players. He's known more for his positional and in-game mastery. But it just goes to show, I think, that to be a top-level player, you have to be good at all aspects of the game. So even in the most positional player, you will find places where they have some great sacrificing attacks. And it goes back, actually, Steinitz, when he wrote about his positional theory in the beginning, he said that once you've accumulated the positional advantages and the situation allows an attack, not only are you allowed to attack, but you're obligated to attack. That is, if you don't attack when the moment is right, the opportunity may slip by, and those positional advantages you've so patiently accumulated may just fade away. And so we'll see an example of a positional player confronted with such a situation here. So let's see. It's Rubinstein has the white pieces, Bogolyubov the black pieces, and this is a position where white looks like he's pretty well set up for the attack. His pieces are looking out on the king's side. The knight is ready to jump in. This rook here is on a half-open file looking at a sensitive spot in black's camp. And Bogolyubov, perhaps sensing the danger here, starts to mobilize his defense with knight to d7. And now is the moment to strike. If you play something other than the best move here, which is bishop takes h6, the advantage actually slips away. And so just for example, say you move rook to the b file, just to put it on a more active square. The idea being that if the queen takes a pawn, you can take the pawn. Then black has time to complete his defense by bringing this knight over, hitting the queen, chasing it back to h5 or f5 maybe. Yeah, either of those looks good. And the attack starts to fade. There's enough defense around the king here, and there's no breaking through. So right at this moment, right after knight to d7 was played, this is the moment when you have to strike. And so a good player needs to learn to recognize there's these defensive moves on the horizon, and he's got to strike now before things turn against him. So bishop takes h6 was played, and there's some nice tactical points to this one. First of all, the pawn is pinned, so black can't take with the pawn. He has to take with the knight. And what that did, the knight was also defending the d6 square. So now this rook can come into d6. And so once again, white has gotten 2 pawns for the bishop. And also he hasn't completely eliminated the pawn cover around the king, but he's improved. He's used that sacrifice to actually improve the activity of his pieces, and he's going to chase this queen away. Now the best defense here is the funny move knight to f8, but this doesn't really lead to a whole lot. After knight f8 attacking the queen, white will take the queen, black will take the queen, and then the rook can come back and grab the knight. So at the end of all that, what that means is that black is basically just giving the piece back, and he remains a pawn down. So that's just a slower way to lose. So Bogolyubov is fighting on with queen to a5, just getting out of the path of that rook. And now queen to h7 check. One of the key ideas, of course, with this sacrifice is you start to chase that king around and try and catch him in a bad spot. And now rook to g6. The rook comes over, and black is going to get that third pawn for the piece, and plus the attack will continue. So if you can calculate ahead this far, this is probably good enough to justify the attack. Now we can continue on a few moves. Knight to f7 was played, and now queen takes g7 check, driving the king to e7. And now in this position, there's one key move. There are other moves like rook to d1, be a perfectly ordinary move, and that would continue the game with just a slight advantage to white. So there's one key move here which is really good for white. So if you want to see if you can find a good move for white in this position, it's not the most obvious move. It's not a forcing move, or not one of those checks, threats, or captures that you always are tuned to look for. But if you want to look for it, pause the video here. Okay, it's the very nice move knight to h4, which Rubinstein found. He was not a slacker when it comes to these things, and it's not an immediate threat, but it's a threat to threaten. The knight can come into this f5 square. It's hard to prevent that and chase the king around some more, and the king doesn't have many good squares. Let's see, rook to h8 was tried, and now knight to f5 check. The king went to d8. So the idea was to get the rook out of the way, and also to put it on a square where it's protected by the knight, and then try to get the king to safety. And now, let's see, Rubinstein continued with rook d1. Actually, the best continuation here is another knight move, knight to d6, a real killer move, threatening knight takes on b7, forking the king and queen, and also threatening just to win more material here. So that would be the best way to continue that attack. So anyway, that's it for this example. Let's take a look at the next one. This final example is the game Efim Geller against Lajos Portish from Moscow, 1967. Geller with the white pieces, let's see, has played a Ruy Lopez, and we get a typical kind of position where this bishop, the Ruy Lopez bishop, is still on this diagonal, and that's a key feature of this game, and I wanted to show it. So it's not on this diagonal where we saw so many other sacrifices happening because the queen could come through to h7 and threaten mate here. But we see other elements. We have the bishop here, we have the queen here, we have the knight here, all around the king side, all very actively pointed. And this pin on this diagonal turns out to be very important as well. Now, Portish is okay still in this position, but he needs to play some kind of defensive move. Knight d8 is recommended here to add some support to the f7 square and free up this queen to move. Instead, he played a very typical Ruy Lopez kind of move. This move is, you see in the Chigorin fence, played a little bit sooner. Basically, you're hitting the bishop and trying to force it back to c2 onto that other diagonal where it'd be blocked in by its own pawn in this case, or it'd be less active. So there's a great move here. I'm just going to put it on the board. It's not bishop takes h6. It's bishop to g5. And the tactical quiz here is see if you can even figure out why this move works. I mean, there's two different ways that this bishop could be taken, and neither of them works. So that's your puzzle for this game. Pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. So like I said, there's two different ways that that bishop can be taken. Let's take a look at queen takes first. Queen takes. Then you don't take back, of course, you take on f7. That bishop on f7 is doing a great job. And then the king, if it runs to the corner, it gets mated. But if it runs here, it also gets mated because the knight is guarding the escape square. So that's just a mate in two. There is no escape. And beautiful coordination between the three white pieces that are involved in the attack. Really working together nicely there. Okay, so the queen can't take it. How about the pawn? And once again, there's a mate in two here. If you want to think about it in case you didn't get it the first time. Okay, knight to g6. Yeah, that pin is still operating. That knight is perfectly safe on g6. And the threat is queen to h8 mate, and there is no stopping it. So that's just mate in one on the board. So those two captures just lead to mate. So that's pretty amazing in this position to find the move bishop g5, and the kind of thing you have to look for in your own games, because this is really the best move in that position and the only one that gives that winning advantage to white. It forces the queen away. Now the queen, as we saw, it needs to stay in touch with the f-pawn. So Portish played queen to d7, and then the follow-up was rook a to d1, just bringing another piece into the attack, hitting the queen. He tried to block here with bishop to d6, and now bishop takes h6. Now the sacrifice is all queued up. He's gotten all his pieces into the attack. This bishop is still controlling this key diagonal, and he can afford to sacrifice the bishop here. And there is no defense. Portish took the bishop, and now instead of taking the pawn, which that's good as well, but there's one other point. Once again, due to this pin, you can put the queen on g6 with check, and this actually is a faster win. If the king goes to h8, which was not played, then queen takes h6 with the check. King goes here, and now the knight can jump in, knight to g6, taking advantage of that pin, threatening the mate here. So the king has to... oh yeah, there's no defense against that mate. That's just lights out. The chess engine is suggesting queen takes h3, but that only puts off the mate for a move. And then in the other direction, in the game, king to f8 was played rather than king to h8. But after queen to f6, which introduces another pin in this direction and threatens to bring the knight in to g6 with a check and a similar winning idea, the king went back to g8 to get out of one of those pins and walks into another pin. And the knight can still come here, but actually I think the most accurate move was played here. He plays rook, not the d-rook, cancel that. Played rook to e3, threatening to bring the rook over, and that is lights out. So Portish resigned at this point. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. In the next one, I'm going to look at other sacrifices, in particular knight sacrifices against the pawns on h6 and h7. So stay tuned, and I will see you then. Bye.